Okay, so I really like space horror movies. I've established this before on the channel, and usually we get about one space horror movie a year, and kind of the one for this year is the movie Ash. So what did I think about it? I really liked parts of it. I really hated parts of it, and some parts I was mixed on. This is kind of a weird situation, so let's get into it.
Just moments. Images. When I woke up, there is no one left.
Real quick for starters, I don't have a lot of footage on this because there wasn't a lot to get offline without me doing some shady stuff, so the footage is going to be kind of limited with this review. But on to the premise. The general setup of this movie, without spoiling too much, is there's this woman. She wakes up on this facility on another planet, and she has no memory who she is. She has no idea what's going on. She doesn't know why the facility is shut down, and there's bodies everywhere. And she has to figure out what the hell's going on and figure out this before her oxygen runs out. And that's the general premise without me spoiling too much of the film. It's a kind of psychological thriller in terms of who am I, what happened, am I responsible, is someone else responsible, and this kind of leads into the movie being a little bit of a slow burn. Quite a bit of the movie is a slow burn, and it hurts the pacing of the film at times. But one of the things about this film is the premise setup is so promising. The setup of a woman waking up on a facility on another planet with a limited crew. Most of the crew is dead and she has no idea she is. It's yeah, I'll watch that movie. That is an excellent setup for a premise. I love that setup. And honestly, one of the things that hurts this overall movie and doesn't take use of the setup is the world building. There's not enough of it. And when you have a character who basically has amnesia and doesn't know what the hell is going on, it's kind of ideal to build the world for that character and for the audience to let them know what the hell's going on. And honestly, the world just has almost no development. Now, interesting enough, this movie had a supposed budget of $10 million. I couldn't get exact numbers. That was kind of the rough ballpark I could find was $10 million. I mean, a movie like Godzilla Minus One, we still don't know the exact budget of that movie, and that was a much bigger movie than this. So, I'm going to say probably it's around $10 million. And definitely there's periods of this movie you're impressed that they made this on $10 million, and then there's parts of the movie it's yeah, I could tell they made this on $10 million, and you feel like you probably could have done a better job with a certain scene on more than less than $10 million. And one of the executive producers on this film is Neil Blomkamp, and that kind of raised my eyebrow because he has a good flair for science fiction. I like his sci-fi. I am eagerly waiting him to go back to sci-fi because I like some of his sci-fi aspects he brings to a movie. And with this movie, I kind of wish that the director of The Creator had it produced, because with that movie, I've mentioned it in my last movie review, it had $8 million budget and it felt like a $500 million film. And so if he had helped produce this, maybe he could have made this $10 million feel like $50 million. This movie desperately needed a larger budget. I'm not saying it needed a $200 million budget, but it definitely needed a $50 to $80 million budget. And it would have been nice if it had... I mean, you look at a movie like Pandorum, which I will be talking about a little more later. That had a budget of $40 million, and that movie looked like it had a $150 million budget. They really used that budget wisely. And so it would have been nice if the budget on this film had been optimized a little bit better so that it felt more like a $50 to $80 million movie than a $10 million movie feeling like a $5 million movie. Yeah, overall, like, my total gripe with this movie was it needed a bigger budget and the director needed a couple more films under his belt. And, like, one of the things that just threw me off about this movie is there's a scene where a character is yelling to another character, "We only have so many hours of air left, and once that's gone, we are going to suffocate to death." And as he's yelling this, behind his head, there's not one, not two, not three, but 4 potted plants that I could count. Okay? If you don't know why that's funny, then you need to go back to school. But I mean, it's like a more seasoned director probably would have caught that. You know, like, hey, maybe we should take the organic things that create air out of the scene when the guy's yelling about we're about to run out of air. And like, there's another scene where there's like a bonsai plant, but I wasn't thinking about that in that scene, but I saw the 4 potted plants in the scene. It's just like, really? You know, it's like little tiny things like that that make me feel like this shouldn't have been this director's first film. Like, if he had done like 2 or 3 films before this, then yeah, I think this would have been perfect for him. But like, this should not have been his first major Hollywood motion picture. And like, who is the director? Well, the trailers and the title card, it says the director is Flying Lotus, which sounds like a weird name until you realize, yeah, it's a R&B rap musician, and his real name's Steven Ellison. And interesting enough, I kind of looked up this guy while I was researching this review, and like, he got a start like applying for an open like membership program on Cartoon Network to create music, and he won. And so he kind of got to start with film television, and he only has 2 projects under his belt. One is a short for one of the VHS movies, which I haven't seen his short yet. It's for VHS 1994. And the other one is for a movie called Kuso, which is like multiple stories taking place in LA, which I haven't seen. But for all intents and purposes, this is kind of his first major Hollywood movie, those being shorts and a indie film. And so, for this being his first major Hollywood film, I go back to what I said before, this shouldn't have been his first one. If he had done 2 or 3 before this, then I think this would have been perfect for him. Especially with the director's eye for visuals. I mean, like, the best aspect of this movie, by far, is the lighting. The lighting is absolutely stunning and gorgeous. It just beautiful. Like, every frame of this movie is almost like a masterpiece. Even the gory ones. I mean, he has a wonderful, masterful eye for lighting. And like, I was genuinely impressed just by how the movie was lit. And I mean, if you're someone who's interested in lighting, watch this movie, because the lighting is outstanding in this film. And like, this director, he had his like mitts in like almost every aspect of this film. When I was watching the credits, I saw his name in the visual effects, I saw his name in the music, I saw his name, I think, in cinematography. So like, this guy, this is his movie. He did multiple jobs on this movie. He's even one of the crew members in the film, and like, the visual effects at times are really impressive. Like, you made this on 10 million? Like, that's pretty good. And then at times the visual effects are dog crap, because like, okay, I could totally tell that actually for 10 million you should have done this shot better. This feels like a $2 million shot. And so, like, it was kind of uneven throughout the entire movie. Sometimes it felt like it was using its $10 million to amazing effect. At other times, it felt like it was not using its $10 million to amazing effect. But, like, then as the movie progresses, it tends to, like, collapse just because it's not structured properly. Like, 70% of the movie is this psychological thriller of, like, who am I? What is this place? Who killed these people? Am I a murderer or am I not? And then the last 30% of the movie turns into a creature feature. And it feels like two opposing stories are like just clashed together and they don't really mesh that well. Whereas you have a movie like Pandorum, where it is a psychological thriller and a creature feature, but it works well with each other. It works well having a creature feature at the same time with psychological thriller. And I think what probably helped with that was it was made apparent that it was a creature feature, like from the beginning, almost, throughout the entire movie. And this, you kind of aren't supposed to know it's a creature feature until the last third of the movie. You're thinking I'm spoiling it, but like the trailer spoils that it's somehow a creature feature, so I'm not really spoiling that much for you. And it's just like, honestly, the creature's not developed that well, and it's just thrown in the last third. You don't really get a lot of tease towards this until the last third, and it just ultimately should have been done better and fleshed out better. And like, one of the things that really bugged me about the last third is the final like creature design, final boss design is genuinely excellent. And it's like, I don't want to spoil it, but if you've played like Dead Space, you have an idea of what this design probably would look like. And like, while I was watching it, instead of being like, oh man, this is amazing, I was like, why didn't they do this earlier? That this would have been so much better if they had done this earlier. I would have preferred if they used this final creature design throughout a lot more of the movie, because we would have gotten that Dead Space movie that I've desperately been wanting. Mark my words, even though I was greatly disappointed with this movie on a whole as a package, I want to see what this director does next, what Flying Lotus or Steven Ellison does next, because there was something here. This definitely had the potential to be an amazing space horror movie. And I think even with like a director's cut where he re-edits the movie could possibly change my mind on this, because it was almost there. It was just almost to a movie where it's like, yeah, I'll buy this. But it just didn't cross the finish line. It needed to be in the oven a little bit longer. And like, I'll say this, if they are making a Dead Space movie, I would not be against Flying Lotus / Steven Ellison directing it, because this did kind of feel like a, hey, I made this movie, would you consider me for the Dead Space movie? Like, this felt a little bit like an audition tape for a Dead Space movie, and I would be perfectly fine with Steven Ellison doing a Dead Space movie. And I do want to see what he does next, because his eye for visuals is as outstanding, like, especially with lighting. So anyway, that's been my review of Ash. What do you guys think? Say off in the comments down below. My name is Christopher Connell with 11 Hour Reviews, and that will be all for today.